If you want a rapid release, I recommend if you're going to do, say, 3 books, write them all at the same time, back to back, edit them at the same time, prep them at the same time, figure out what your cadence is for releasing them. Prepare as much as you can ahead of time, because as you're releasing those books back to back, you're working on the next one and the next one.
Welcome to the Write It Scared podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Fraser, a formerly repressed creative soul turned fiction writer, story editor, and author accelerator certified fiction book coach. At Write It Scared, we tell the truth about why writing a novel is so hard by acknowledging that most writers grapple with 2 stories: the one they want to put on the page to the best of their ability, and the often subconscious internal story that prevents them from doing it. This show is designed to help you identify and rewrite the internal narrative holding you back while you discover and write the story you want to tell and learn all the tools to help you do that successfully. Join me each week for a new episode where we'll talk about writing to deepen our understanding of the craft and of ourselves as writers. Writing a novel is an inside job that we do not do alone. Welcome to Write It Scared. I'm glad you're here. Let's dive in. Hey, writer. Welcome back to the Write It Scared podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Fraser. Today, we are diving into the big world of independent publishing with fantasy author Michelle Miles. Michelle has written more than 40 books. Yep, 40. And she is sharing what it really takes to build a sustainable indie career while juggling a day job, family, and a whole lot of creative passion. In our conversation, we talk about dealing with burnout, pivoting from trad dreams and small presses into indie spaces, and how to keep showing up for your stories even when the doubts creep in. You'll also hear Michelle's hard-earned advice on building systems that work for your life, managing indie publishing from start to finish, and why discipline and desire are the only things you truly need. This is one of my all-time favorite conversations on the podcast, and my big takeaway was that there's no single right path to publication. What matters is persistence, purpose, and refusing to let anyone or anything stand in your way. So let me give you Michelle's bio, and then we'll head into the interview. Michelle Miles believes every story should have a little bit of magic, a dash of danger, and a whole lot of heart. She writes fantasy, paranormal, and young adult adventures filled with fierce heroines, unforgettable heroes, and the kind of romance that makes you believe in happily ever after. From angels and demons to dragons, elves, and time travelers, her books invite readers into worlds brimming with epic quests, high stakes, and enchanting possibilities. When she's not crafting new adventures, Michelle lends her voice to other authors' worlds as a narrator and host of the Miles Beyond the Page podcast, where writers share the triumphs and challenges of their creative journeys. Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for coming on the Write It Scared podcast. I am so excited to talk to you today. I just absolutely adore all the books that you put out in the world, and I can't wait to hear more about your process and your journey in independent publishing and all of the things. So how are you?
Oh, thank you, Stacey. I'm so excited to be here. I'm excellent, and I'm really excited to talk about all the things, the books, the writing, everything.
All the things. Yes. Well, before we dive into that, why don't you just share a bit of your writing journey? How'd you get here? How'd you end up coming to writing and publishing?
Yeah, it feels like a long journey. When I was in high school, in junior high and high school, I hated math. So I would sit in the back of the class and just jot down like little stories, fantasy stories, knights in shining armor, damsels in distress, and all of that. My mother was a big reader and, voracious. She read everything. And one day she handed me a Victoria Holt book. It was called The Road to Paradise Island. And I fell in love with it. I loved the historical romance of it. And I really wanted to write that. But, you really have to be an experienced writer for me to kind of write those types of books. But then I found fantasy in my high school years and fell in love with that genre. And I really, really wanted to write fantasy. That's all I really wanted to do. And I dabbled with it a little bit here and there. And then, life happens. I ended up kind of trying to write a novel. Didn't really pan out. Then I had a baby and who is now 24. And so then things stopped for a little bit. And then I discovered Romance Writers of America. I was really looking for, some guidance, help, how do I do this? I don't know anything about publishing. I mean, I read Writer's Digest, but that's so high level and doesn't really teach you anything about the craft of writing. And back then, I mean, things were so different. It was traditional publishing was your only path. So I discovered Romance Writers America. I joined them in 2004. And I completely went nuts. I'm like, I'm volunteering for everything. I wanted to learn everything. I wanted to know everything. I wanted to write all the things. I really wanted to write fantasy, but I just didn't have the experience as a writer to do that. So my first book was actually published in 2006, and it was contemporary, very spicy romance, which that series is no longer available because that's just not what I write anymore. And then I started kind of dabbling with time travel. I was published by a few small presses. So some of them they're all gone now. Samhain, Alora's Cave, Cobblestone Press. I mean, I had books with them. I got all my rights back. It was a struggle to get my rights back from Alora's Cave, but I was right. I had written a fantasy romance series with them. So I really wanted the big traditional publisher. I was like, I want to be published with Tor. I had high aspirations, and it just didn't pan out. And so I got this idea for an urban fantasy series, and the whole series came to me kind of in a flash one day, and I shopped it around, and it was rejected over and over and over by agents and editors. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to self-publish it. So that was 2020 when I finally published that first book in the series. And there was just something very cool to me about seeing the process from start to finish. Like, I had the conception of the idea. I wrote the book. I think I rewrote that first book 12 times before I finally got it right. But I finally got it right. And in 2020, and is when I decided I'm just going to forget traditional publishing right now. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for the indie publishing. And so that's how I started my indie publishing journey. And here I am.
In 2020, you started your indie publishing journey. Gosh, that was only 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, I had re-released my other books, my backlist, but they didn't do well at all. So I had all these books, and it was really kind of in the last 18 months that I really started thinking of it more as a business and not as writing. And so I rebranded myself. I ditched all the hot, spicy stuff that I just wasn't writing anymore. I unpublished all of those. So those are about 8 books or so that I took down, and I won't be redoing. I won't be putting them back up because I just don't write that anymore. And then I just decided to go all in with my fairy tale retellings and my fantasy. And so I'm about to publish my 40th book next month, but that's to say that not all of those 40 books are available because I'm trying to streamline myself into just being that fantasy writer. And I'm really immersed in this, what I call my Enchanted Realms series. That's my fairy tale retellings. I'm really immersed in that. And I love the stories, and I love making up different side things to do with that, and coming up with bonus material for the readers and everything. That was a long answer.
Oh, it was great. I love listening. I absolutely love hearing people's journeys. So it sounded like you were definitely interested in traditional publishing. You wanted Tor. I had similar aspirations when I wrote my first fantasy. It was like, yay. And it also didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Thankfully, though, I mean, I time and place, right?
Yeah.
But I'm curious to know how it felt to want to pursue this avenue of publication for so long, and to not have it work out, and then decide to pivot.
Yeah.
Especially, given the landscape of publishing of the time, because I mean, over the last 15 to 20 years, indie publishing has it really has blown up and flourished, and it's just amazing the capabilities and the options that authors have now. So I'm just very curious, what all went into the decision to publish independently?
It was a lot of things. I should back up a little bit. I will tell you that in 2015, I was ready to quit. I mean, I was ready to throw in the towel. I had had so much bad luck with the small presses. It was not a good time when you have a publisher basically ripping you off from the royalties. It's really disheartening and it's frustrating, and you just feel like you're not getting anywhere. So 2015, I took a step back, and I just was like, am I really going to keep doing this? Am I really going to keep throwing money at this? And I decided I'm just going to take a year off, and I'm going to read craft books, and I'm going to take some courses, and I'm going to try to figure this out. And I guess really my first indie published book would be my epic fantasy. And I decided to publish that myself in 2016. I mean, I hired an editor, I got, cover art. But that decision did not come lightly. I mean, I really, really believe in my books. And I really believe that there's a place for them on the bookshelf in a bookstore. But when you get rejection after rejection from agents and editors, and you've exhausted all of those people that want to read your genre, fantasy is a very, not really niche, but no, there's not a lot of agents and editors who are just were banging down the doors looking for fantasy authors back then. Now, things may be different now. I haven't looked at the market. I don't know. So I was ready to quit. The only thing that saved me was I took a workshop. I found this woman, her name is Holly Lyle, who sadly passed away last year, but she was a phenomenal writer and she was a phenomenal workshop teacher. And her workshops are still available on her website. But I took her How to Think Sideways workshop that sort of makes you get out of your own way coming when you're doing writing, right? So it makes you think about approaching your writing in a different way when you're stumped or you're blocked or you just don't know where to go. And so I took that and I started to feel the excitement of writing again. And that's how I wrote In the Tower of the Wizard King. As it came up, I wrote it. I thought, am I going to shop this around again? Am I going to go through that horrible waiting period of 6 months to a year to see if I'm going to get any sort of response or just, or a rejection or anything? And at that point I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try it. I'm just going to throw it out there. And then that's when I started the whole, urban fantasy. And then I was like, I'm all in. I'm all in with my urban fantasy series. I'm going to self-publish it. And that's how I ended up that. But yeah, it was a disappointing time in my life where I was just ready to throw in the towel and say, forget it.
Yeah, I completely get that. And I'm so glad that you didn't and that you found Holly and found what you needed, right? To rekindle that, to rekindle your spark. But I think that happens to a lot of us.
Yeah.
We just get beat down. And I know when sometimes I feel that way, I have to pay attention to where my focus is. If my focus is just all on the future, it's just all way out there, and it's just on the focus of what I don't have yet.
Yeah.
And I feel like shit.
Yeah.
And I love what you're saying is you brought things back into your focus of control.
Right. I really tried to I remember, so I worked at this one place and I remember this so vividly. It was on my lunch hour. I was reading Christopher Vogler's The Hero's Journey, which is a phenomenal book, especially for fantasy writers. And I was sitting there reading that, and someone walked in and saw what I was reading and very snarky said, "Oh, are you writing a book?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm writing a book." But I didn't say that. I just kind of laughed and went, "Yes, yeah, maybe someday." I just kind of blew it off. But that has really stuck with me for a long time. And, it's those types of moments where you really question yourself. Like, who do I think I am writing a book? Those types of things.
Oh, yes.
And then you just kind of have to, you have to really get into a mental space of those people don't matter. Those people don't understand what it's like to sit in front of a laptop or a screen or whatever for hours upon hours and try to create something that will resonate not only with yourself, but with readers. So that was a hard moment for me. And that was in my moment of, am I going to quit? But I managed to pull it together and I finished reading The Hero's Journey and I love that book. And I think it really helped me understand how to craft fantasy books, So yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I think the people, sometimes we get people who, well, I get people who ask, people that are outside of my writer life, people that are non-writers, and
Mhm.
they ask questions like about writing a book or what are you writing? Or they ask the horrible question, when can I read it?
Yeah.
I hate that question. And I often feel myself shrinking back because of that feeling of who am I to
Right.
attempt this? Who am I to do this? And like you said, the people who matter, they want to know. And the people who don't matter, the people who are jerks and assholes, they don't
Right.
matter, right?
Right.
You're what you value, what you say is important to you, you make that. You
Yes,
decide that.
absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that's just something that we have to embrace too and just forget about those people. But it's really hard because they get into your headspace sometimes, you know.
Yeah, and all of this stuff that we see on social media, we're always looking at the end
Yes.
result, right? It's always like the
Yeah.
book's out, the book's published, the da da da
Yeah.
da, right? And so we're very future focused, and that makes it hard to stay in the moment. I did you see Lee Berdugo's TED Talk recently?
I haven't.
Oh boy, it's called The Art of Discomfort,
Oh.
and it's 15 minutes, and it is way worth it. But she just talks about how the thing that we've forgotten about as creatives is just that the feelings that we get when it's not going well, those are
Mhm.
actually good things, because it's that discomfort is means that we're in it, and it's acting like a compass. It's serving a purpose. It's not supposed to be easy.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean we're miserable all the fucking time. Otherwise we would not do this, right? But anyway, it's really good. So it's like what you're saying. It's like, yeah, there's gonna be bumps, there's gonna be hard times, but that doesn't mean you're on the wrong track.
Right. Right. I'm gonna check that out.
Oh,
That sounds
totally.
great.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
actually, I will link it in the show notes, because
Awesome.
I think all of us should listen to it several
Yeah.
times. All right. Thank you for sharing all of that and for being, transparent and vulnerable. So you have written a lot of books,
Yeah.
a lot of books. I don't know if it's accurate, but on Goodreads, I think there's 55 titles under your author profile. I'm not sure if that's accurate, because you said it was like 40, but so I'm really curious, like, how in the hell do you balance life and
Yeah.
and all of that writing?
Yeah. So the 55 books, yeah, that is what Goodreads shows, but a lot of those are not
They're not
available.
they're on. They're not
Yeah.
on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They're not available anymore. Like the contemporary romance series that I wrote, gone.
But still,
Um,
you wrote all those damn
but I
books.
wrote them. Right. So I'll tell you what I've done for years and years. When I decided I'm all in, I had to figure out a way to, I was raising a kid. I was a single mom at some point. My current husband, he's amazing. He's 100% on board. He's so supportive. He's like my biggest champion. So what I decided to do was I'm going to write at lunch at my lunch hour because I have a day job. So I had to figure it out, right? So it wasn't like, do I schlep an extra laptop to work? No, I don't want to do that. So I had to really get creative about how do I do this? Now, when I first started doing this, they had those little HP minis. I don't know if you remember them. They were like this big.
No.
It was like a piece of crap. No laptop. It barely ran Word. It was so bad, but it did what I needed it to do. And I lived off a thumb drive. So like I would put my work in progress on a thumb drive. I would stick it in that little HP mini and I would write during lunch. I would eat my lunch and I would write. In the evenings, I would take my thumb drive and I'd stick it in my laptop at home and I would write from 7 to 8. And so that was 2 hours of writing time. And I got to where I could produce anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 words a day doing that. Now, I didn't write every day. I didn't write on the weekends because I was just too busy when I was raising my son. But now my brain is so focused on that when it's lunchtime during the week, it's like, oh yeah, it's time to go write. It's time to go write and eat and, figure stuff out. And every evening at 7 o'clock, my husband's like, see you later. He knows that I come up to my office and I sit here and I will bang out the words it may not be the best book right then. It's just me trying to get the story down. I don't plot pretty much. I mean, I know where the story needs to go. I know the ending. I have to have a blurb, but it's just me sitting here with my characters in my head, just trying to get the story out. So that's how I did it. And I can typically turn out a book in about 3 months now.
Damn.
Now, my urban fantasy, those are super long books. They're like 90 to 100,000 words. It's major research. She is a relic hunter. So it's like, trying to figure out the quest and the clues and where does she find this and where is she going? So I spent a lot of time researching for those books, and those took a lot longer. But the fairy tales, I can usually bang them out in about 3 to 4 months.
Mm. And they're retellings. So there is a little bit of a, what do you want to call it? A foundation.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. So it's just kind of taking the tropes and twisting them up.
Yeah. That's amazing. So what I got out of what you just said was you had a desire. You had to figure it out. So you had to use discipline.
Mm-hmm.
That discipline turned into habit.
Yes.
And that habit basically has turned into muscle memory for you.
Right. Exactly. 100%. Yeah. 100%.
I love that. And I think that's such a wonderful takeaway because, I mean, that's all of us. We all have to figure it out. We all have to find the slices in our life to do the thing that we want to do.
Yeah.
And that often means that we've got to make some sacrifices.
Yeah.
And or we have to ask for help, which I hate. Which means like, like I have a child too. And it's like, I need, to ask for time.
Yeah.
And that means I have to value that time. I have to value the work that I'm doing, the creative work that I'm doing. And that's damn hard.
It is hard.
When you just think of it as like, it's just, I don't know. There's like this fine line between taking it seriously and being dedicated to it. And then there's also like, but then if you do that and you can pigeonhole yourself into paralysis too. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I just came to a point where, yes, I have a day job, but I'm like, I am not letting anything stand in my way anymore. I let a lot of things stand in my way, the job, the kid. Now, some things you just can't avoid. Like you've got to, before he can drive, you've got to.
I got a parent.
Right. You got to be a parent. You got to be a chauffeur. You got to do this and that. But I got to a point recently, I was in a very high stress job and I was like, this isn't worth it anymore. This is not what I want to do anymore. And this is killing me. It's killing my creativity. It's killing my sleep. I'm stressed out all the time. I'm having health issues. And I'm like, fuck this. I'm out. So I started looking for another job that I could, that was a lot less stress, that I could just kind of, hate to say it, I'm just going to coast.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Because I am not letting anything stand in my way anymore. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work my butt off to get there. And it took me a long time to get there. But it may be some other writers, it's a lot quicker for them. But for me, it was like, I think I was just afraid of success. And I still am. It's terrifying to think that I could finally achieve all of my hopes and dreams in a way.
And that's a real thing. That's a real thing. And I think everybody's path is going to be different. It's going to take a different time frame for everybody. I think hearing other people's stories like yours can help inspire us. We'll hear threads that resonate with us and be like, you know what? Michelle, she did that. She found a way. So yeah, I can too. I can too.
You absolutely
my way
can.
Will look different. It'll be my way, but I can too. So I love that. So I'm really curious about your independent publishing journey. And I'm curious about the process. So what is it like for you to take your idea and write it and then roll it through? What steps do you take? Get it ready to post on the website and by the way, your direct sales website is the bomb. Holy crap.
Thank you.
That is beautiful. It's so well done.
Thank you
Anyway,
so
so
much.
everybody should go look at that. Everybody who's curious about independent publishing and direct sales needs to go look at that. So yeah, walk us through
Yeah.
the process of what
Yeah. For me, I get an idea. Like, I'll start with, I had been wanting to write fairy tales for a long, long time. And the urban fantasy series took me 5 years to write. It was very dark. It was very, it's angels and demons and good versus evil. So I was just really ready for a change. And I had been thinking about the fairy tales, and I wanted something light, sweet, fun, different. And so as I was finishing up that series, I sat down and started writing a story Bible. Now, I don't do this with every series, but this one felt different. And so I really wanted to get it right. I really wanted to figure out what the themes and the tropes were for each book that I wanted to write. And I wanted to do something different, and which has confused readers. So I have now added an afterword to each book because I have a prologue and an epilogue. And they're like, this doesn't have anything to do with no, it doesn't. But, stay with me, stay the course. So the prologue and the epilogue, I really sat down and I thought about it. I have Aunt Hildy and her niece, Marigold. Aunt Hildy is a storyteller and tells Marigold a story every book. And that's how I start the book, because I thought, this is like a framing device. It's very Princess Bride, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's what I wanted to do. But I wanted to take it a step further and map out a story for these two characters. So book 10, and this is kind of a secret, but I'm going to say it. Book 10 is her story. So you're going to follow Marigold through these 9 books, her prologue or epilogue story about how she's discovering who she is and how she comes to be. And so I really had to sit down and think about that. And so I mapped out all of the books. Now I don't always have the blurbs ready to go, but the first 3 books, I decided I'm going to write these back to back. I'm going to do a rapid release. So I had to figure out that. I had to figure out the framing story. What does that look like? What is her age? So it starts when she's 5 years old, and the book 10 will be when she's in her 20s, and it's her story. And so I had to sit down and figure out what did that look like? And I wrote the tropes, and I figured out the blurb, and I figured out kind of the high level story about how I wanted to retell it. What was the twist? How am I going to do this different? I started with Cinderella, and my first question that popped into my head was, what if Cinderella fell in love with a prince from another realm? What does that look like? How does that work? And so I wrote the book, and I just loved it. I had so much fun writing it. And then as I was finishing that and putting it into edits, I started book 2. And then same thing. I mean, by the time I got it ready, book 1 ready for publication, I was editing book two and writing book 3. So it was like I was constantly doing something in that world. I do all my own formatting. I have a beta reader that is invaluable to me. I have someone who does copy edits for me. I do a lot of self-editing. I use a lot of tools that help me self-edit. And, stuff still gets missed, but, we're not perfect. We're human, right? So we make typos. We do, we mess up. But I do all of that myself. I upload all of my stuff myself. I have an incredible cover artist. She does my prints. She does my audio covers. She does all my ebook covers. And so I just start putting it together. When I'm ready for it to go live, I kind of start mapping out, well, I want my release date to be X. So, what does that look like for getting it uploaded and doing pre-orders and getting the arcs out? It's a lot of steps. And so it takes a lot of time. I'm working on book 5 of the fairy tale series right now. It's coming out at the end of October. So right now I've got it formatted. I've got it ready to go. I've uploaded it. I'm putting it ready, getting up the arcs ready to go. I've got a sign up sheet for people to sign up for the arcs, and then I will release the arcs in early October.
Is this Once Upon a Midnight Dreary?
It is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so then, I'll start looking at, okay, this is my release date. What ads do I need? How much ad spend do I want to do? And I will stack ads around the release date. I have a newsletter with about 6,000 people on it that I typically send a newsletter out. It's really twice a week because I have one for the podcast and one for my, I call it News of the Realm. And so I have, newsletters that go out weekly, and I'll start pumping it up and here's a sneak peek. And I always write a bonus chapter for each one of these full-length novels. So I have to have that ready to go before release date so I can link it to in the back of the book. And all of my back matter, I have to really think about how does it all connect and how can I engage people and keep them engaged in that series. So it's a lot. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a lot.
Well, that was the process. And I'm sitting over here going, holy shit.
Yeah.
But I love it. And this particular example is probably pretty nuanced because it's a story within a story that spans over a series.
Yes.
Right. So that's, and you decided to rapid release the first 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
I actually know several authors who are thinking about something similar, not the story within the story idea, but they have a big, big world. And they're and it's interconnected, and there's some interconnected timelines, and they're trying to figure out like what's the best way to release this. What would you say to an author like that who has big plans to release a lot of books in an interconnected world and it has never done this before? Where would you tell them to start? And they definitely want to go indie. Where would you tell them to start?
Get a story Bible. Start with your story Bible. Figure it out. Figure out your world. World building is huge in fantasy, and you really need to be good about it. I would say start with your world. Start with your story Bible. I have a massive story Bible for this series, right? So I'm old school. I keep a Word doc. A lot of people like Scrivener, Plotter, whatever works for you. Figure out all of the moving pieces. Your characters, what they look like. You're not going to remember from book to book. So you need to write down what does my character look like? What is their backstory? What is their history? How are they related to my other main characters? You have to figure out how they're all interconnected, because anything in fiction, nothing is coincidental. Everything in fiction happens for a reason. But this is just my opinion. Everything in fiction happens for a reason. If you want to connect those worlds, if you want to connect those timelines, I did a dual timeline in The Tower of the Wizard King. I had the present day, I had the past and fairy, and they converge in the middle of the book. So I had to sit down and figure out, I actually wrote the past first, the present second, and then I dropped them in and figured out, you want to add Easter eggs, you want to add hints as to what's happening. So I would say write it all as much as you can. Anything can change later on. But if you can write if you're like saying doing a 5-book series, write the first 2 books. Figure out what happens in those first 2 books and how they happen. If it's a dual timeline, if it's an interconnected world, how are they connected? Who are you connecting? Who or what? It could be a planet. It could be a world. It could be, a setting, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It could be characters. It could be any of those themes, anything like that. If you're writing big world, specifically in fantasy and science fiction, if you're writing those bigger world, figure out what you're doing. Get a story Bible going and figure out how to connect them and then start writing. And if you want a rapid release, I recommend if you're going to do 3 books, write them all at the same time, back to back, edit them at the same time, prep them at the same time for release. Figure out what your cadence is for releasing them. When am I going to do arcs? When am I going to do ads? How do I engage my newsletter list? How do I engage social media? Prepare as much as you can ahead of time as you can, because as you're releasing those books back to back, you're working on the next one and the next one. So that would be my best advice.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is get as far ahead as you can, have as much prepared as you can, and have a solid foundation.
Yeah.
So that you can continue to write the next and the next and the next.
Right.
Okay. So let's say you did that. You've written these 3 books, and so do you go through a developmental editor, or do you skip that step now and just go straight to copy and then proof or beta? How does it work for you?
When I have written for publishers, and I do write for a publisher now, Dragon Blade. I have a historical fantasy time travel series with them. I wrote those books back to back. I sent them in. there was no changes. There's no developmental changes for me. I don't want to sound like I'm boasting, but I know how to put together a story.
Well,
I don't.
you got $55. You figured it out. So
Yeah, I don't.
you can trust your internal editor.
I do. I trust my instincts, my gut. I don't really. Now, that's not to say I've never used a developmental editor. I have in the early stages, just to kind of figure out how you put together a story.
You mean in the early stages of your career?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
Now I don't do that. I know what my journey is. I know, what is the inciting incident? What is the call to action? What is the pinch points? I do different things for different books. Like sometimes I like the 7 points story structure. Sometimes I just want the 3 acts. Sometimes I just want to wing it. I'm a weird writer. Like I said, I don't really plot. I do get to a point where I go, wait, I don't know what happens next. So I have to stop and think about it. But as long as I know the end, I can write to the end. So I don't really use a developmental editor. Once I finish the book and I send it off to my beta readers, and then I get comments back, and there's really nothing to change. Like even when I had the Dragon Blade books, she's edited my first 2 books with them. She's like, yeah, it's just some grammar. It's just some word changes here or there. And I'm like, wow, okay, cool. I'm good with that. That makes it easy on me. So I feel like that I know how to put together a story now. I don't really need a developmental editor, and they're extremely expensive if you're just starting out. So my advice is learn the craft as much as you can through inexpensive means, workshops, online. I watched a YouTube series about the 7-point structure. That's how I figured it out, and he used Harry Potter, I think, as an example. I can't remember the guy's name, but I still have it, and I refer to that every now and then. I think there's just so many tools out there now available to authors to figure out how to put together a story that, unless you just want to blow $2,000-3,000 on a developmental editor, just try to figure it out yourself. That will make you a better writer. That will make you stronger too as a writer, and you will understand how to put those stories together.
I come from a completely different lens. I get where you're coming from and do agree. But for me, like using when I wrote my first novel, I didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground. I didn't know what I was doing, right? I felt like the canon of information out there available was so huge.
It is huge.
So huge. I didn't even know like where to start. And I hooked into a couple of mentor types. I mean, they didn't know who the hell I was at the time, but I really appreciated what they had to say on their podcasts, and so kind of got into their world slowly. And that's how I wound up with Author Accelerator and hired a book coach at the time, because I didn't feel like I had the bandwidth or the brain space, right, to be able to filter through it all and kind of try to figure. So anyway, I went that route, and it was one of the most rewarding things to work with someone just one-on-one.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have community at all.
Right.
And then I later went and worked with a developmental editor, and I did learn an incredible amount. And I was and if you do, for anybody out there, if you go with a developmental editor, which lots of us use them, right? Definitely, I recommend finding someone you vibe with.
Yeah.
You need to vibe with them. They need to like what you write. So this probably requires like somebody who's willing to get on a Zoom call with you and talk about your story first, and even do a sample edit of some pages and all of those things. And then also if they're willing to look at the changes that you make and give you feedback. So that was the experience that I had, and it was incredible. So I took it, and it was not cheap. It wasn't cheap, but it was an investment, and it was the right kind of investment for me, and I wouldn't change it. So, and you have chosen to make your investments in different ways. So there's lots of different ways to do it.
There are, but I will tell you that when I very first started back into the writing world, Writer's Digest had this novel writing workshop where you could work one-on-one with someone. And I did that for a long, it had to be like year 2000 or something. It was a long, long time ago. So I did work with someone one-on-one, and I did get feedback on that. So I think that was the first learning experience I had with how to put together a book, how to put together a story. What is, how does that work? So I don't think that you should not use a developmental editor if you don't if you think you need it, absolutely go get one, find one. You're absolutely right. Find someone who gets what you're writing, especially if you're writing genre fiction like fantasy, science fiction, and all of that, romance, whatever.
Yeah. Don't give your fantasy novel to someone who likes hard-boiled crimes.
Yes, exactly.
Do that.
They won't get it.
They won't get it. They will not get it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think we're saying the same thing. It's just like, find what you need. And
right.
It's individual to you. And as you go on your journey, the author's journey, right? Your needs are going to change.
Exactly.
Right. So just like you don't need a developmental editor anymore because you've internalized that process.
Yeah.
And I hope to high hell I get there someday too, because that's what I want. Fantastic. Gosh, well, you have shared so much wisdom, so much knowledge. And you know what? You should do a course on independent publishing. Like you need one more thing, right?
Yeah.
One more hat to wear, but I would take it. I'm just saying, if you ever put that, I would take it. So just a couple more questions before we wrap up. I mean, you're very accomplished. You've been at this a long, long time. So do you ever have doubt? Does doubt ever creep up for you?
Oh, gosh, yes. Every day, every single day. I'm like, why am I doing this? Maybe I suck. Maybe my books are terrible. Yeah, every day. You fight those doubt demons every single day. And it's hard. Yeah, I've been going through a phase of when I sit down to write, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I should just not do this anymore. And then I have to remind myself, look, you've written how many books? You got this. You know how to do this. But it's a hard thing to shut that voice up in the back of your head that tells you, well, I don't know, you're probably not going to do anything.
What do you think helps
you
you shut it up?
I'm really determined. Like I have this completely overwhelming determination and drive to make this my career. And I'm really working hard to get there. I launched the store. It's been kind of lackluster. And so, I've been trying to think of ways that I can get people more engaged with that, the direct sales. And then I'm like, well, maybe I did it too soon. And maybe I shouldn't have set up the LLC. And maybe I shouldn't have done this. So, there's a lot of that. Maybe I shouldn't have stuff going on in my brain. And then I just really have to stop and think about the future and what does that look like for me? And I know this is going to sound kind of corny, but you just really have to manifest that within yourself. You just have to really stop and think about, what do you really want? I don't want to work for somebody for the rest of my life. I don't want to be in the trenches of corporate America for the rest of my life. And I have at least another 20 years to work. And when I sat down and realized that, I went, ugh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be at somebody's beck and call for the next 20 years. I want to be author Michelle. I want to kick ass at running my own business and engaging with readers and talking about my books and writing these magical stories. And that's what I want to do. So I really have to stop and think about that a lot and tell myself, you got this. But it's hard. It's hard, especially when you go on social media and you see all the Debbie Downers out there going, with the 1-star reviews and that this book sucked and I can't believe she wrote this book and I will never read one of her books again. I mean, that's happened to me. So, and you just have to ignore that. And it's hard to do that. And really, I just have to really believe in myself and know that I can do this. But every day's a challenge.
I love that. Thank you. Thanks for being real, because I'd rather hear that than I'd hear, I meditate.
It's not sunshine and rainbows, that's for sure. It's a lot of in the trenches, digging yourself out of shit.
But yeah, I would rather hear it, the real and the raw, and the fact that it is hard. And I mentioned this on the last podcast interview that I did. Amy Bernstein wrote a book called, Embracing the Doubt Monster. I can't remember if it's Embracing. And I'm sorry, Amy, if I botched your book's title. I still love you and I still love your book. But anyway, her book is about how to embrace that doubt as a part of the creative process. And there's a line in her book that says creativity and doubt are two sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other.
Oh, yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. So it is not a sign that things are going wrong. It is not a sign that you're doing the wrong thing or that you're on the wrong path. Actually, the fact that you have doubts is probably a sign that you are right where you're supposed to be. Even if right where you're supposed to be feels fucking crunchy.
Yes. I love that.
And, one of my dad's favorite sayings, he says, the only thing constant is change, right? So this
yeah.
too shall pass kind of mentality. Like it feels not so good right now, but that's going to change. That's going to change. And I love just how much strength and passion, you can hear it. You have such strength and passion in your compass. You know where it's pointed. You know where you're going. And I think that's half the battle.
It is.
Yeah.
I think you just really have to get to that point of, like I said, nothing is going to stand in my way. Not this day job, nothing. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to get where I want to go.
I'll drink my Starbucks to that. All right. So last couple questions before we wrap up. What do you think the best piece of writing or creative advice is that you've ever received? What's something that you've held on to that, maybe you use as a North Star?
Write what you don't know. We've always heard
me.
Every writer has always received that. Write what you know. I'm sorry, that's bullshit. I'm going to write what I don't know. I'm going to sit down and figure it out. I'm going to sit down and write something. I don't know what it feels like to fly in a spaceship. I don't know what it feels like to be a princess that's a lost heir locked in a tower. I don't know what that feels like, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to sit here and get into the head of that character and figure out what that feels like. I don't know what it's like to use magic. I don't know what it's like to use a magic wand or say a chant or, any of that stuff. But you sit and figure it out. So write what you don't know is one of my best advice that has always hung around in my brain.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that advice gets really misconstrued too, the whole write what you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can mess with people's permission slips a little bit.
Yeah.
The way I like to frame it is like write what you know emotionally or can tap into emotionally as far as like the human experience and the human condition. We all know loss. We all know fear. We all know anxiety. We all know the fear of judgment. And then go have fun with the shit you don't know. Like the spaceships and being a lost heir and meeting a smoking hot caretaker guy.
Yeah, exactly.
of your manner, which it sounds like that's the premise for
it is.
Yeah, for the
curse.
Once Upon a Midnight Dreary. Which that just sounds like such a fun book. I'm so excited. You said that's coming out in October.
It comes out October 28th. Is my Pose the Raven / Rebecca mashup gothic romance with a cursed caretaker and an heiress who is grieving after the loss of her parents, and she's inherited this manor and she moves back to it. She was there as a child. It's haunted. I'm just going to say it right out loud. It's haunted, and they have to figure out how to get rid of the haunting. It's a short book. It's only around 60,000 words, so it's not really novella length. It's a little bit longer than a novella, but there's a lot of emotion packed into that. And I read it with the lights on.
Wow. Yeah, I get Bronte, I get Poe, I get all kinds of delicious gothic vibes. That's awesome.
Very gothic. Yeah, it
sounds amazing.
It was the hardest book I've ever written. I will never write another gothic romance again. But it was, I hope I did it justice. I hope it's good.
See, write the shit you don't know and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And then what is your wish to your fellow writers out there who are just beginning and thinking about pursuing an independent publishing journey? What's your wish to them?
Don't ever give up. Persevere. Just keep going. Don't listen to those doubt demons. And if this is something that you really want to do, that it's just burning in your soul, do it. And don't let anyone stand in your way. And don't let the people say, when are you going to write a real book? Or are you writing a book? Just don't listen to those people. If this is something that is really inside you, your stories have to get out. The world needs good storytellers. God knows we need it right now more than anything. Just keep going and don't ever give up. And into publishing, I'm not going to lie, it is hard. It is so hard. But if you can build a team around you of people that that can help you, be it you're taking a class or you find a really amazing cover artist that will do anything and everything for you. You find an editor who can help you. You find a beta reader that will help you. You start building your newsletter list. Do it. Get those people. Hold on to them, hug them, love them. Don't ever let them go.
Fantastic. Michelle, this has been one of my favorite conversations, I think,
Oh,
on the
thank you.
podcast so far. You are you're a delight, and you're so honest. And just thank you so much for your time and for sharing your journey with me and our listeners. So I can't wait to see more from you.
Thanks. I really loved being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Write It Scared podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please make sure to hit the follow button so you never miss an episode. And please leave a review. Reviews help other writers like you find the voices and messages they need to hear to continue to write their stories. Let's lift each other up. Remember, you can be scared and still be unstoppable. I'll see you next week.